Hi, everyone. If you're a regular viewer of the BELA Asks segment of the Ethicast, then you'll know that we routinely use this program to answer high-level questions about business integrity that have been posed to us by the members of the Business Ethics Leadership Alliance, or BELA, a global ethics and compliance community that provides exclusive access to helpful data, benchmarking, events, and other resources to advance your E&C program. This includes a concierge service where members can submit their ethics and compliance questions, and our internal experts respond with an answer and helpful resources with more information. Most of those questions are specific to a particular company's needs, but an awful lot of them speak to issues facing E&C professionals everywhere. This year, we've received a record number of concierge questions, more than 350, in fact. And as we wrap up 2025 and look to 2026, we're taking a moment to examine the broader E&C trends that BELA Asks had elevated, including the most important one, why there really is no competition in compliance. As always, with us to share her insights and guidance is Ethisphere's Chief Strategy Officer and BELA Chair, Erica Salmon Byrne. Erica, so glad you could join us for this special episode.
Oh, Bill, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to pull this format of this particular BELA Asks together. It is the time of year where we look back and we look forward, and you and I have had a lot of fun thinking about the through lines that we've seen over the course of this year.
We have. And let me just start by saying once again, we've had more than 350 BELA concierge requests this year. The concierge requests really popped off. What through lines have you seen within these that point to recurring areas of interest or perhaps even trends that are worth noticing?
Yeah. So, Bill, I took the opportunity to talk to the team and kind of look back across the concierge requests that we've gotten over the course of this year. And our three most popular topics this year were questions about training. So, and we saw that reflected in one of our most popular BELA Asks of the year, which is the episode that I did with our colleague Julia Boys on test out and where test out is appropriate. But it was interesting when I did some industry analysis of the training piece of things. Many of those training questions came from companies in the manufacturing space. And so I think we were seeing a real focus from companies in that space, thinking about how do I train more effectively? Who do I train? And things along those lines. Investigations was the second most commonly asked topic, right? Category of questions. And there we saw lots and lots of really good questions come in around how do I train my investigators? How do I think about my speak up culture in times of transition? How do I think about root cause? So you just had our colleagues, Jody and Eric, on a terrific Ethicast talking about why you do root cause analysis. We got a lot of benchmarking questions in this area as well. What are other companies doing about X, right? So lots and lots of questions about investigations. And then the third one, and this was a surprise to me, Bill, when I looked at the numbers, was related to policy simplification. So we got a ton of questions on why should I have a policy on policies? What does a good policy look like? And here's what I think was driving that. I think that we saw a lot of compliance teams over the course of 2025 be thinking strategically about how they could use artificial intelligence to do their work more effectively and more efficiently. What is one of the best ways to use AI? Chatbots on top of your policies to answer common employee questions. What's needed before you can do that effectively and efficiently? Decent policies, right? So before you put the AI on top of your policy ecosystem, you want to make sure that your policy ecosystem is consistent, it's coherent, and it's the kind of thing that is actually a usable piece of data to put into your large language model. So I think we did see a lot of companies this year asking themselves, okay, what do I need to do to simplify my policy universe across not just my compliance policies, but my HR policies, my IT policies, my finance policies, right? That's what a good policy ecosystem does, is it harmonizes all of those different control pieces of documentation. And the harmonization of that control documentation then makes it so much easier for your large language models to find what it is that employees are looking for. So I think that, that surge in policy related questions, particularly where it came from. So it was like late Q1, early Q2 through August-ish was where we saw most of that happening. And so I think that really is indicative of a lot of work that companies were doing to try to streamline their policy universe so that they could then put an agent on top of it and answer employee questions more effectively.
I could not agree with you more on that, because that's right around the time when we started seeing a lot of other movement in terms of programs that were shifting from the AI governance to an AI operationalization mindset,
Yep.
and
Yep.
lots doing a lot of very interesting and innovative things in that time. It was kind of astonishing to see how fast the whole community was moving in those
Mhm.
around AI. So, and yeah, I remember looking at the questions we got, tons and tons and tons of questions about AI,
Yep.
which I suspect as we look to 2026, we'll only get more of those as everyone's AI maturity takes a big step forward and they start looking at other ways they can make use of this, or deeper ways they can make use of this as well. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Erica, something that you say a lot and I say a lot, is, we're often saying, there is no competition in compliance. And
Mhm.
tend to see that definitely within the BELA community as members share their insights and their success stories with each other. But I'd love to get, some ideas from you on what do you think really drives this phenomenon, and what advice do you have for folks so that they can best harness E&C peer experience in 2026?
Yeah. Yeah, Bill, I took a look over, the concierge request. Well, I should say, I asked our internal GPT to take a look over, speaking of AI use, I asked our internal GPT to take a look over the last year's worth of concierge requests, and what do others do about X? A version of that appeared in 62% of this year's concierge requests. So, definitely a deep, deep interest amongst the community in understanding how other companies have solved a particular thing that an E&C team is working on. And that makes sense to me for two reasons. As you always say in the intro to BELA Asks, thematically, the things that come up amongst the community are applicable to companies of all shapes and sizes, right? That is part
Mhm.
of the reason why BELA exists in the first place, is to try to cross-pollinate best practices from one industry to another. And so, I think our community is particularly well accustomed to asking us, what do other companies do about X, Y, or Z? It's also a lot easier to persuade your company to do X, Y, or Z if it is something that other organizations are doing. So that piece of it, I think, makes a tremendous amount of sense. And so I have a couple of thoughts as we look forward to 2026 and we think about some of these big shifts and changes and situations that we will all be facing next year. One is, lean in on your peer connections, whether they are through us or direct networks you have built, right? Ask the question. Don't assume that the situation that you have found yourself in is so unique to you that you can't
Mhm.
find a way to ask it. Now, look,
Yeah.
confidentiality is important. I'm definitely not saying to, share specific company secrets as you ask the question, but
Yeah.
think about what the root of the challenge is that you are facing and find a way to ask someone else if they have faced a similar issue, right? So one of our second most popular BELA Asks in 2025, Bill, was how do I think about AI use to prevent insider trading?
Mhm.
Now, the AI piece of that is brand new, and the way in which your company might be using artificial intelligence is probably confidential, proprietary, something that your organization is investing significantly in.
Mhm.
But insider trading, right? The behavior behind that risk, the things that people do to do that kind of thing, that's not new. We've been dealing with that for, as long as
Since
there
the
have been
beginning.
exchanges on which to trade. So
Yep. Yep.
so
Yep.
so think about, much like we do root cause on investigations, much like we do root cause on process failures, what is at the heart of the thing you are trying to address?
Mhm.
And pieces of it are going to be new and novel, right? Without question, particularly in the environment we're all operating in right now. But the people piece of it isn't going to be. And so the chances are good that someone in your organization has dealt with the thing or not your organization, someone within
Mhm.
the broader ecosystem has dealt with the thing you're trying to deal with. So ask the question, right? Ask it of us, ask it of each other. Um, this is how we all get better.
Indeed. Well, speaking of asking questions, I'm gonna pull the curtain back a little bit to see what it looks like to create one of these episodes. And Erica, you and I, and our colleague Julie as well, we have a really cool backstage discussion before we ever record any episode, where we look at the questions that have come in most recently. And we take a look at them, like,
Mhm.
okay, what are the ones we can take a look at? Which ones are very, very specific? Which ones speak more generally? And then there's a kind of a weird, kind of XYZ where like, this is a great question. Does it speak to a moment right now that makes it especially pertinent? And there's lots of moving factors. And that's my very long-winded way of saying that there are a ton of great questions that have been sent to us this year that we just couldn't actually get to because there's only so many weeks in the year. And there's just a lot of great questions. They were all answered internally, but they weren't all questions that we could actually answer on behalf of the community here. So I'm dying to know, of all the questions that you were looking at over the course of the year, were there any that you came across that you really, really wanted to address, but you just never got a chance to do so?
Yeah, Bill, I think while it was not a category of concierge requests that hit the top 5 in terms of most commonly asked questions, the ones that really kind of spoke to my heart that I didn't always get enough time to touch on were the ones related to governance. And so we did do some governance questions because, quite frankly, I put my thumb on the scale and said, no, Bill and Julia, we're going to do this one. But the relationship between a compliance officer and the board is such a critically important relationship. And it is something that, is certainly a passion area of mine to think about and talk about with the audiences that I am privileged enough to get a chance to speak with. And we got some very, very good governance related questions this year that we were not able to answer in the Ethicast format. Now we always, of course, answered them directly to the member. I did try to pull some of those pieces into some of the writing I did this year. And there are obviously a lot of great people that are thinking about some of these issues now. But my hope for 2026 is I would really like to be able to share with the community in more detail the data that we have collected over the years on governance practices, how to onboard a director effectively, what good board reporting looks like, right? I have been on a lot of calls with BELA members trying to talk to them about how to refresh their board reporting, how to give the board different information, how to think about how you talk about your program, how do you harmonize the terminology that you use with what the rest of the control functions are using. So the board is getting a message that builds on itself. They can see the through lines in terms of how some of these risks play together. So that's one of my wishes for 2026 is that, we as a community think a lot more about how we are engaging our directors and that we have a chance to share more of our insights on that.
Indeed. Well, look, Erica, it would not be an Ethicast episode, and certainly I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity in our last live episode of the year to ask you, would you mind if I hit you with the follow-up question?
Bill, I have never minded. I will never mind. And I love the fact that you always ask. Yes, hit me with the follow-up question, please.
So as you've looked at the breadth and depth of all of the questions that came in this year, and they covered so much amazing ground. I am curious though, are there any questions you thought you might receive this year and didn't? Or put another way, are there areas of the E&C profession where you expected to see a greater thirst for information than there actually turned out to be this year?
Yeah. I think reflecting on the questions that we got this past year, and sort of some of the BELA Asks episodes with which all of you engaged most robustly over the course of the year, I would point to 2 things that stood out to me, Bill. One is the kinds of questions that we got, and particularly the sorts of episodes of BELA Asks that you all engaged with, definitely reflected a maturation of programs. So we are seeing companies think more and more strategically about how their work is done and how it fits into the rest of what the organization is doing. We are seeing more sophisticated questions, I guess would be a better way of phrasing this. I did expect to see more questions this year than we ended up getting that reflected a focus on the interdisciplinary nature of the function. And I mean that in 2 senses. In one sense, it is the relationship that you need to build with your control functions. So we didn't get as many, how do I speak to X questions as I expected to see, particularly in the middle chunk of this year, when there was so much economic volatility and we had lots of compliance teams that were being asked to cut budgets and to do more with less. Generally speaking, if I think over the course of the last couple of decades of doing this work, when we hit those kinds of times, we get questions about how do I effectively extend my resources by partnering with another control function? And we didn't get as many questions about that as I thought we would. Now, maybe that's because everybody's gotten good at it, but my suspicion is that, we had a lot of people who were just kind of went heads down in their silo and did the best they could with what they had. And so as we look to 2026, I'm hopeful that if that was you and you did the best you could with what you had in 25 in your silo, that 26 is the year where you can pick your head up a little bit and say, okay, how do I think about what matters to my finance function and the way I can talk about my function in the context of finance? How do I think about what matters to my procurement function or my sales function or my HR function or my audit function? How do I craft the pitch of what I'm doing using language that matters to that function such that we build stronger partnerships going into the new year? So that's one piece, that sort of interdisciplinary piece is something that I expected to see a little bit more of. I was fascinated to see, Bill, when we looked back at the top BELA Asks episodes, though, that what are the characteristics of a strong antitrust program was in the top 3. So that was unexpected, but I think that is also a reflection of the maturation of the function and of the profession, because I think people are starting to think about the ways in which some of these risk areas are going to start showing up in the new way in which we're doing business. So that antitrust episode pulled in algorithmic collusion, which is not 2 words that we would have put together before 10 years ago, right? In any way, shape, or form. So we have to think more strategically about the way in which we are doing our work as a company as a whole and the kinds of impacts that that's going to have on the program. The other thing that as I think about 2026, that I'm looking forward to talking more about, and Bill and I love getting direct BELA Asks questions, by the way, everybody. So drop them in our DMs, send us an email, however you want to get it over to us. But I am planning to talk more about the ROI of your compliance program, and so really leaning into that narrative, where we've got some great proof points, but we're going to keep building on these, that your ethics and compliance efforts are actually a value creator, not a cost center. And that is going to be really important work for us to be doing, and it's going to be really important work for the community to be doing over the course of the coming years. As we move away from being a very reactive function that sort of responds to regulatory insights, and lean into this idea that when we are charged as companies with protecting our intangible assets, and 80% of the company's value is intangible assets, the work that this community does is critically important to protecting those intangible assets. And we need to be making the case that is what we are doing. We're not investigating. We're not, the internal police. We are culture creators that are trying to get out in front of problems as proactively and as effectively and efficiently as we can. And so we're going to keep sharing that message. And, I look forward to uncovering every last proof point we can on that part.
Preach. Well, Erica, thank you so much for your time and for your energy, and especially for your intentionality as you help to guide E&C professionals everywhere through the challenges and the opportunities that come with leading a program and come with this very, very important work. You've done so much over the course of the year to speak to the community, and I know they've in many different ways share their appreciation for it. But on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for your energies on this episode, but also for all BELA Asks episode over the course of the year.
No, Bill, well, it's really my pleasure. I think the concierge request service that we offer to the BELA community it's a really special benefit, and it gives us an opportunity to connect so regularly with so many wonderful people doing this work. But as you say, on every BELA Asks episode, there is no competition in compliance. And so it is really my pleasure to be honestly just the mouthpiece for very, very smart people who are doing very, very important work.
Well, to learn more about BELA, please visit ethisphere.com/BELA, that's BELA, to request guest access to the Member Resource Hub and to speak with a BELA Engagement Director. And if you have a question that you would like answered on this program, please contact the BELA Concierge Service or contact myself or Erica, and we'll get to work on that for you right away. And if I can just take a pause for a second, Erica had some great words to say about the maturity of the questions we get. We get some amazing questions, very, very deep questions. But you know what? Every question is valid. every question is welcome. So whatever question you may have, if you think it might be appropriate for this program, please send it our way. We would love to see it. We would love to talk about it, and we'd love to answer it. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed the show. For new episodes each week, be sure to follow Ethisphere on LinkedIn, and please subscribe to the Ethicast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Every like, comment, and share helps to make the world a better place by advancing business integrity, and we truly appreciate your support. Well, that's all for now, but until next time, remember, strong ethics is good business. See you soon.
Happy New Year.